Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the USD 312 Board of Education. We are live in the high school auditorium with guests with us and all board members to know, with the exception of Mr. Nisley at this time. I would ask everybody to please stand and join me in saying the flag salute and paying honor to America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next up is to approve our agenda. Clerk, do you have any changes?
I do not have any changes.
Does any board member have any changes he or she would like to make? If not, I would entertain a motion to accept the agenda as presented. Got a first by Bill. Do I have a second? Dustin. All in favor, raise your right hand, and we're unanimous at 6-0. Clerk, we got the approval of the minutes here on item 4, but they're also in the consent agenda.
Yeah, I just noticed that too. Let's just wait.
Okay. So item number 4 is not there after just approving it. We'll get to the minutes in the consent agenda. This is now what we're calling our Citizens Open Forum. It's a time for anybody in the public to come forth and speak before the board on a topic that he or she would like. I understand I've got a couple of people who are interested to address the board. We don't have a podium for you folks, but you can come out here in the middle. I think we've got a camera. Paul, is this the best camera for them to just want to stand out here in the center? We'll listen to Bryn Howard first.
I do have a microphone.
Okay.
Pretty popular, Rob.
Okay. Okay. You're Michael. Let's go one at a time. Michael. Okay. Bryn's going to go first. Before you go, Bryn, let me just say that got some rules here. Make sure you're not making any comments about individuals, personnel, or anything like that. That's not the place for that to happen. We'll give you 3 minutes.
Short and sweet.
Okay.
I'm here to talk about the consideration for wrestling. I think Michael's going to talk about some different things, but I just kind of wanted to talk about the benefits of having a wrestling program. It's been a few years since we've had one. If you've never watched a wrestling match, there's a lot of things that you would get to see just from watching one. One would be that wrestlers work really hard to learn how to handle their emotions. They know that their effort determines their outcome of their match, and although it's a team sport, at that point in time when they're on the mat, it's their individual effort and outcome. Wrestlers know how to respect authority, and they also learn how to respect their opponents. And wrestlers have to be dependable. They're expected to show up to every practice giving their best because their drill partners depend on them. We have had some really great success in our football program lately, and wrestling can only help improve that. From the research I did, wrestlers have increased agility, quickness, balance, flexibility, coordination, discipline, and aggressiveness. And there are 2 kids in particular I can think of that are on our football team now. One of them, he is a junior now, but he played as a freshman in every quarter of varsity. And his brother now is a freshman who is starting varsity, and both wrestled from a very young age. And then they quit once they got to middle school. So there are we have other football players, but those are just two that I could think of off the top of my head. But there are a lot of benefits to wrestling, and we would just like you to consider it.
Good deal, thank you. Mr. Howard, or pardon me. Ms. Lawfrey?
Good evening. My name is Michael Auditorium. I'm here to support wrestling, obviously, whether that be in the form of a co-op or a program somewhere down the road. We're looking for guidance and solutions to this. There's none of the schools contacted. I've been in touch with the principal and the AD. If none of the schools contacted are willing to go up, and I don't want the conversation to die. What are the options? How do we get this done? What are the solutions? I know we have to discuss obstacles, but how do we get around those? I just want to keep the conversation alive. Just off the top of my head, I can think of more schools with a program than without a program. I thought that was important to bring up to this meeting. Myself, I have 3 boys interested in wrestling. They currently wrestle. They spend 7 to 10 months out of the year, 2 to 4 days a week, and they've been doing this since they were 5 and 6 years old. It's a passion. However, now they're faced with a tough decision. They don't, do they give it up once they hit high school, just to stay here at Haven? Or, like in our household, Justin, he's a freshman this year, next year, he's going to have to face a crucial decision. Does he leave his friends and go elsewhere to wrestle, or does he stay here at Haven and give up everything he's worked so hard for so long? There are several kids that will also soon face this decision, and some that already have. I would like to think that they have enough people right here in this room to make that an easy decision for them. Nobody wants to leave it, but that is just a very real possibility if they don't chase their passions. Wrestling is growing, and it's because it's now sanctioned. Programs, clubs, tournaments are being added by the week, even during COVID. Friends University, as you guys know, I don't know if anybody knows this, but they just added a wrestling program there. Girls wrestling is exploding because it is now sanctioned. I just ask that we keep the conversation going until we figure out how we can make this work. Why is the answer no? The interest is here, and the kids interested wrestle at a very high level, on a national level, right here in this district. I think they deserve a fair shake, and I think they deserve our 100% of our efforts to continue their careers at Haven High School with wrestling. That's all I have. I think for your time.
Do we have a middle school program and a high school program, or what is that?
No, what happens is they go to different clubs, some with Hutch, the Rogers are with Hutch, we're the Lotteries, we wrestle with Mays. I know the Hoskins, they wrestle with Hutch, and there's others within grade school that also wrestle. I think we got one for the Schuler club, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you, Mr. Lawfrey. I appreciate your time. Item number 6. Anybody else, first of all, that is wanting to speak that's not signed up? Item number 6, Clerk, is recognitions, presentations.
Yes, we have Bill's here to talk tonight a little bit about Sugo. We're going to highlight from the high school tonight. And Bill, I'll give you the floor here.
Okay. So those of you who don't know, my name is Bill Yoder. I'm the current student body president of Haven High School. fit more with the kind of status quo and like the overall well-being of Haven High School as a whole. So we'll be taking certain things out of the Constitution, changing them to make them more modernized, and basically just making sure that our student council runs smoother as a benefit. I'll just keep this kind of brief because, I mean, after all, we got some other matters to get to, recognize that. And as such, that's all that's happening with student council as of now.
You know, Bill and the city council are looking on, again, kind of looking at their constitution, which hasn't changed in quite some time.
Yes.
Good. And then looking at governing as a student body more than just, club of activities. How are we affecting and handling those kind of things? Being part of those conversations with administration and those students.
Right, yeah, in the past, student council hasn't really been a big part of the school governing system or the school administration as a whole. As we transition in the future, as we change the constitution and stuff like that, hopefully the student council will have a more rooted position in how the school is run and stuff like that, and that our voice is more student-led rather than organization-led, if that makes any sense. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anything further, Clark? On to item number 7, the consent agenda, which is made up of 4 or 5 different pieces here. First of which is our financial report / warrants with Danelle.
Our ending cash for September was $4,275,973.08. Our expenditures for the month totaled $338,772.40. Payroll, $377,201.11. Transfers for the month was $120,000. Warrants for the month was $835,973.31. We had some checks that were over $10,000. That was $15,000 for Odyssey Wear. Heartland Credit Union, $10,646.94 was credit card payments, and that was to the Sparks that we're getting from the state, the Sparks money for COVID. 4J Facility Supply, $10,194.80. Disinfectant sprayers, Sparks money. CDW Government, $17,038.76 for Microsoft renewal and tech equipment. The City of Haven, $16,405.75 utilities. Pure Zone, $12,118.50 cleaning supplies, Sparks money. Trucks CDI Tech, $10,171.24 tablets and stands, and that was Sparks money.
When I first saw the credit card payment, that's not like an ongoing, we pay that off, no interest, okay.
Each month.
Anybody have any questions for Danelle?
Guess is that the last of the cleaner, the sprayer actually does as a room sanitizer? Did we have 2 of them on order? Is that for 2 or is that just 1 or? Where's Chris?
So,
I think that was 2 and some supplies.
Okay,
but-
so we've got them all,
but
got them all now.
I think we've got all our,
I don't know if we've got,
I think we do.
I don't know if we've got them all or not.
okay, if there are no further questions for Danelle, we'll move on to the principal / director written reports. They've all been provided for you in your drive. Comments from all of our directors. Does anybody have any questions for these folks? One that caught my attention, of course, has to do with curriculum, our test scores, academic scores, and Kara mentioned that you were shocked, as were other people on our district leadership team, about our low academic scores. Can you address that for us, or will you be able to enlighten us maybe a little bit? Perhaps?
We just had our meeting with Josh for MTSS, and as a district leadership team, we took a look at all of our data that has to do with math, reading, and social emotional skills. And as we were looking at those things, we are very low. So it's just one of those things that, another reason that we are bringing MTSS in to get some systems in place to look at our core instruction. So we're really trying to evaluate what are we doing in the classroom and what are we doing to improve.
Okay. I don't know how often that's measured. How soon will you know if we're, making any improvements along the way?
So we'll give benchmark tests fall, winter, spring. So our next benchmark test will come up before Christmas. And we'll be able to see where kind of kids are at. But for this kind of a process, it's going to take a year or two just to really see, to put those processes in place. We're hoping to get like a walkthrough tool and go into classrooms and really be able to help teachers reflect on their teaching and things that we need to do better.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions about the reports? We have a verbal report, I believe, from Dr. Moore.
Yes, my verbal report this evening is just to let you guys know we've been working on our crisis plan again this year. We try and update that yearly, and we will share that with you in executive session since it is a protected document. We've reorganized a little bit of the document in itself. Not a whole lot of change in the procedures, but more just the organization of it to have better flow for administrators and those of us that are using that document to navigate us through crisis. We did add a few other things. We didn't have anything in there for earthquakes, and it's the days of earthquakes, unfortunately, in Kansas, so we're starting to hint that into our work. We also did put in something for pandemic and mass illness response. It's not just this year, but this year did definitely make us aware that we do have some room to grow there. We've had some mass illnesses in some of our schools and had to react to that, and we wanted to put that pen to paper there for that. Also, we needed to join a lot of the other districts in adding some suicide awareness items into our crisis document to meet some state requirements there. And bus evacuation was another one that we added this year, just as part of our overall scheme and looking at safety in the district. We wanted to make sure we included some transportation things as well. So I'd probably stand for questions at some point during the executive session for that.
Okay. Thank you for that. We have two sets of minutes in your drive, one from September 14th, our regular board meeting in September, and then our special board meeting just last week, October 6th. Anybody see any changes, corrections that need to be made in these? It says, Bill, that I made the motion to adjourn the special meeting. Is that correct?
I don't know, I guess so. You were ready to get out.
I guess so. So we have that in there. Is there anything in the consent agenda that any member would like to pull out of there and address separately? If not, I would entertain that we approve the consent agenda as presented to us.
In the September 14th meetings, Ken isn't listed as present. It's got me in the beginning and then me arriving late.
So you're saying that Ken,
I think one of those John Weitzel's is supposed to be a Ken, but honestly I can't remember which one. I don't think I was late that week, but
So, right now, you know, it's,
I broke the times down, so. I don't know what else.
Oh, no, I'm thinking either that one or that one needs to be Ken. There's just,
I had to think Ken was in Florida one weekend.
So is the question whether Ken was here or not?
He made a motion.
yeah, I mean, he was obviously here. I'm just thinking that one of the John Weitzel's was supposed to be Ken.
Oh,
Okay. Yep. I have Ken.
I was just a small thing, but
but maybe it should say, Ken Nisley arrived at 6:05 instead of John Weitzel, because it
Okay.
shows you being here at 6, so.
Yeah. All right, I get it changed.
all right. We have made the correction to the September 14th meeting. With that change, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Bill?
Second.
Jessica? All in favor, raise your right hand, and we're 6-0 on that. Thank you for that. The observation there, John. We're on to our action discussion items. The first one is KASB delegate. Clark?
Yeah, I don't know how much you look ahead to the KASB convention. As you can see there, that date is December 2 through 4. It is a virtual meeting this year. Maybe makes it easier for some of you to attend, but if you remember, that's kind of our big board workshop. And as we get closer, we'll certainly give you the opportunity to register through Danelle's report for that event. Typically, we try to give you a little heads up. We don't have to name a delegate tonight. Obviously, if you just wanted to think about it and name one November, that'd be fine. Or if you had an idea of who might be the board's representative. If you remember, KASB comes up with some legislative positions and asks each board to have a vote along those lines. And that usually happens along the lines of the KASB delegate program at the convention.
And KASB always provides us with the proposed changes
They
from
do.
the legislative committee, so we'll have a chance to be able to look those over as a board and give our thumbs up to our delegate on what we think of the proposed changes. And is there anybody tonight who says they want to serve in that capacity? Again, Clark mentioned we don't have to have it tonight, but it's something to think of. It's going to be pretty easy to do this year, doing it virtually as opposed to having to drive somewhere to do it, so. I've done it, I know Jessica's done it. If you want to do it, let me know, but we've got some time to think about it. Item number 2 is wrestling consideration, Clark.
Well, Ken had asked us to put that on the agenda, and I know, so I was curious to see what his approach to that was, but nevertheless, it's on the agenda, and I noticed that our athletic director put some information in his report to you guys about that. So I guess the question is, how would you like for us to proceed on that?
Well, I'd like to be able to hear from the board member who asked that it be added to the agenda to find out what their thinking was and their reasoning for bringing this up. We've had it on the board agenda in past years when this comes up every few years, and it was not supported at that time. So with Ken being absent, I would just suggest that we go ahead and just table this perhaps until, if he wants to bring it up next board meeting.
I would say, how many people would we need for a program to be viable?
I don't-
Like how many
I don't know the exact
interested
number for
students?
that. I would say probably double digits, obviously, in the teens probably we might get consistently.
And is that something we could do a poll of the students and find out who was interested, or?
I mean, we could, but it's my understanding that's been done in the past and numbers just weren't there, so.
When's the last time we had a wrestling program here?
I don't know the answer to that.
But you reached out to a bunch of schools and none were interested in a co-op.
That's correct.
Well, I would say, like, I know that we've talked about this before, and I'm not opposed to tabling it till Ken can be here. I'm not sure what his reasoning was, but I do think, I mean, we have some people standing here, not all of them spoke, but in support of, and I was contacted by another parent who was interested. I know we've talked about it before, but there are different reasonings and different timing, students coming through the high school. And from what I saw in the report, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it looked like we contacted 5 schools that were not interested in the co-op. And I know that COVID might be a concern, but hopefully we don't all have to live with this forever. I think we, you know, there's some people here that are passionate about it. I think I would at least like to see us discuss it a little bit further before we just say, well, we're not gonna do this, because if we've talked about it this many times, my perspective is there are people out there that are asking us to do this, they're interested in it. I'd at least like to know how many total would be interested. You know, if co-oping is not an answer, you know, I don't, honestly, like, I can't remember what I had for, you know, breakfast yesterday, so, I mean, I don't think talking about it for a little bit of time, and maybe learning a little bit more, is a bad thing. I think we owe it to our patrons to at least have a viable discussion about it, instead of just saying, okay, well, these 5 schools said no, so the answer is no.
Yeah, no, I had a son that wrestled, and then, of course, Haven does not have a program. And he probably would have wrestled through high school. And so I think, I'd like to see it discussed, and obviously he's leaving, but, I mean, I still think it's, we need to talk about it and see if we can find a viable option to make it happen for him, or.
And I'm sure they'd be willing to do some legwork too, to talk to some schools and see, you know, who would be interested in.
Yeah, I think that what I guess what I was looking for is send us to go investigate it. There's several questions to be answered. As an athletic director, I went through this process a few times, but several questions to be answered. And so if you guys are interested, we'll go investigate it and bring a report back in a month.
I would like to ask a specific question about co-oping. I don't really know what all that entails, but there were some comments in the report that we had related to people shy away from that. I don't know why. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of it. So just from that perspective, I would, before we do additional investigating or whatever, anybody does that, can anybody shed a little bit of light on that for me? You probably know.
I can. A co-op is an agreement with another school district, so that would mean somebody else would be the host site. They would invite us in to be part of their program. Typically, that's done when they are struggling with numbers, and so they're looking for someone else to come in and help with their numbers. It is an agreement that 2 schools have to come to that has to be approved by Kansas State High School Activities Association. One of I would say one of the best things about it is it has the potential of helping 2 schools that maybe would have low numbers, and it's also probably as inexpensive way for us to get started as there might be. You know, obviously, us having our own program starting from scratch, there's gonna be some costs, that'll have to be, handled. You know, we really don't have the equipment, and probably one of the big things is a mat. And so, maybe that's the next step, is investigate what our interest is, investigate our costs, bring it back to you so you guys can make a much better informed decision.
And one more question, I'm sorry, I know we're not really discussing, but I just, for maybe my own research, if you co-op with a school and that other school has a wrestling program, do we actually have to buy all that equipment and things if since they're traveling to?
Yeah, you know, you wrestle under their banner during the year. So a lot of times that means you use their equipment, their singlets, but you break away for postseason. So you
Gotcha.
become Haven in postseason, so you would still need some of their
I
equipment.
see, okay.
But obviously,
Thank you.
the big ticket item would be the mat.
Okay.
Where if you went someone else, that would be their expense.
Mr. Kirkpatrick, in your report, you bolded the letters that the schools, 5 schools are not interested.
Yeah, there was some pretty strong emphasis from a couple of them. Nickerson was an absolute no, and their biggest reason was that their program is already successful, already has good numbers, and they weren't looking to take on any more people. When I talked to Andale, the impression was, we don't want Haven kids taking the position of Andale kids. And they were pretty satisfied with their numbers. Halstead had already turned Sedgwick down twice and said, we're not interested in co-oping at this time. When I talked to Hutch Trinity, I know they don't currently have a program, but I was just seeing if that was something that could be a potential. And I would think the consensus was from probably the majority of the ADs and principals I talked to, they weren't interested in a cooperative agreement for various reasons. Some of them have had cooperative agreements in other athletics events, and they just haven't worked out in the past with them. So they tend to, as I quote, tend to shy away from them.
Would it make sense to look into co-oping with a program like Sedgwick that's looking for a partner that doesn't have a program?
I mean, they have that potential, but there's gonna be a lot of costs between the two schools.
Because it sounds like we've got,
And
what, at
and
least
then you
8
have to
interested.
decide, in that situation, who's gonna be the host school.
Yeah.
I know, when I talked to one school, they had mentioned that, well, we would never want our kids to go to Haven and be Haven Wildcats. We want them to stay at our school and be whatever their school is, you know? So, yeah, I can give Sedgwick a call.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like if Sedgwick was looking and we've got 8 students here, you know, to get in that double digit, if they had 2, I mean, that would get us to where we could have a program for these guys. And so I think it's definitely worth looking into.
So Clerk, I guess you have a task now of coming back next month with a report on wrestling.
We
Sounds
come
like the
back with a
consensus that
report on wrestling.
we're asking for here. I remember the last time we talked about this as well, we had loaned out our mats to Halstead perhaps, and that was a long time ago that we talked about that, and I don't know if those mats are worth
I
asking.
can't imagine what condition they would be in by now, because that's been,
We did check on.
Okay.
do they still exist, or have they thrown them away?
They have one that is in average to poor condition, that is like their secondary practice mat. They do use it, but
Well, let's check into a few things and see if we can answer some questions about some of the items that were brought up there, transportation costs, Keisha fees, coach salaries, things like that, I suppose. I love wrestling as a sport. I think it does help develop your football team, and I would like to see it if we can do it. We've in the past said no because we were worried about money, and we were also worried about, okay, where do we go from here? Do we have a golf team? Do we have a bowling team? Do we have other activities. It's certainly worth exploring again, and we'll put it back on the agenda for next week, or next month.
We have a few boys in girls program, we're gonna get, I'm not sending that wrong. Is there girls in the high school? Do they have their own division now? Because I mean, we couldn't have a boys program with that and a girls program, which is something good.
There's sometimes some truth to that.
Anything else? Item number 3 is motion for executive session, and actually we have 2 of these back to back. We'll do them one at a time. The first one involves school security matters, is that right?
Correct.
I'll just read the motion here. I make a motion to recess to executive session to discuss the district crisis plan pursuant to the exception under KLMA for school security matters to ensure the security of the school, its buildings, and/or its systems. Executive session to include board, all administrators, is that correct?
That's correct.
And not to exceed 15 minutes. The board shall convene an open session. It's 6:39, so that would be 6:55. That's the motion. Do I have a second? Jessica, all in favor, raise your right hand, and that's 6-0. You folks can stay here. We're gonna go,
I might just give everybody a heads up, we'll go to this executive session. We'll briefly come back and make another motion for another executive session, and we'll move back again. So 2 of them are coming.
surgery.
We're gonna go back in.
And we're gonna go back into executive session, and I'll need the motion.
I move the board
I
recess.
move the board recess executive session to discuss issues with current staff members pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception in the KOMA for
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Clark,
Clerk, I've seen them be.
Clark, I've seen them be in it.
Anybody else?
Anybody else?
Okay.
Okay. I have
6:57, so let's say
6:57, so let's say
7:10.
7:10 by the time we get there and make the motion.
So second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those
Favor, raise right hand.
Favor, raise right hand.
5-0.
3, 4, 5, 0. Sorry, Bill.
All right, we're back in public session. All board members back. We're on to item number 5, clarification of policy on school closures.
In your drive, I put a policy entitled EBBD, Evacuations and Emergencies. Not a big deal, but this came up across Reno County, and I wanted to share it with you that we do have policy in place. So I followed up with the attorney at KSB, and I said, okay, if we have like event related to the pandemic, does this policy give me the authority to cancel a school? And obviously, there's information about canceling during the day and things like that, but he kind of brought up, how it went about, and it just says the superintendent believes the safety of students is threatened by severe weather or other circumstances. And he said certainly a pandemic would fit into that other circumstances. So he says, yes, if this policy has been updated to include that, and ours was the updated version, I guess that money we paid a few years ago maybe was worth it to update all of our policies. So just wanted to let you know, no big deal, but we are covered with policy that I could make that decision to temporarily close the building based upon sickness, I guess, if you will. So, no action on that.
Okay, does anybody have any questions, comments on that? If not, we will move on to item number 6, the capital outlay expenditure plan.
Well, let's see if I can project this on the wall here. So some of you were around last year when we started talking about capital outlay budgeting and expenditures. So I'm going to show you 2 items that are also in your drive they're kind of under the related items, but you can see them up here as well. So first of all, it's kind of our capital outlay budgeting document, and I'll just go through and tell you what you're looking at. If you remember, when we approved our budget for the year, we made a little bit of cut to our mill levy for capital outlay. So you can see that reflected there in that top line at 6.1 mills, which brings in about $490,000 for us. Last year, that number was more like $560,000. So that's part of making that reduction that occurs. There are some additional revenues that we kind of guesstimate. That you can see $50,000 there. So gives us kind of a budget of around $540,000. That is an approximate number. And then in the middle section you see, I call those expenditures that are givens, that we really don't have a lot of choice in, that we've kind of committed to. So those proposed expenditures, there's our favorite, custom energy at $256,000. Transportation, that is our favorite because we got to support rotation of vehicles. And then you can see maintenance, there's some flooring and painting and furniture and other equipment type items. Technology is a vital one, as we have Chromebooks and teacher laptops that have to be revolved. So we do kind of need to commit to that, and certainly our uniform rotation, once you get started down that road, you want to stick with that. And then a few band instruments that we've committed to. So If you add that all up, that comes up to $526,000. You can see there in red some items for consideration. I'm going to show you that document as soon as we're done here with this deal, so you can kind of see the budget first. So if you look at our current balance, and that was as of September 2020, I didn't look at it tonight. It would have been in your financial report. We always give you our balance, cash balances. I didn't look at it tonight. So a nice number, 1.9 million is the potential balance in capital outlay prior to this year's spending, of course. And so if you were to take that 526,000 out of there, that would still leave almost 1.4. So the question will come up is, how much money do we want to spend on capital improvements this year? And we'll get to that list here in just a second. You may be remembered, it's always my goal to keep that dollar amount at the $1 million or more standpoint, and try not to be below that. That might not be possible this year. We'll see what kind of projects we come up with. Questions on the kind of the proposed budget there? So I haven't given you the dollar amount of all those items in red yet, and I don't even have it tonight, but I wanted to show those to you. Okay, and then there's another document in there that's called USD 312 Capital Outlay Project List. And so on the top of there, you see in red the projects we did this past year, totaled up to $272,000. Actually ended up being really a little bit less than we had really planned to spend. And then there in the blue and the black below that are potential projects. What I find out is these potential projects are always getting added. Chris will come in and say, hey, I got a project we really need to do. Administrators kind of come up with things from time to time. I haven't heard, it's been probably a couple months since I've heard the idea of turf for the football field. And so this is all kind of an always changing list. And sometimes you guys have things that you come up with that you want to get added to that list. So just to remind you, last year we really had hopes and intentions of doing an auditorium renovation. And we were late enough getting started that the bids we were getting, we weren't getting bids. People just didn't have time to fit it into their summer schedule. So it's kind of our hope, and that's why I have that at the top of the list, being we had intentions of doing it last year, that would be something we could get started on early, November, December, and get that out for bid and kind of come up with what our scope would be and what all we would be replacing there. And so that one is still on there. My pet project is the electrical upgrade at the stadium. Still makes me a little nervous that somebody's going to go turn too many lights on out there, and we're going to fry some things. So for those of you that don't remember, when we put the new lights at the stadium, we were told then we don't have enough electrical service feeding that to support football stadium and 2 softball fields. And so we've always been told, don't turn all 3 of those on at the same time. And so, I know we originally looked into that, and that price was between $15,000 and $20,000. Haven't bid it, haven't got an official price, but that's something that I don't ever want to forget about, because there's going to come a day when all of us are not in these positions, and my hope is we have that fixed prior to that happening. A couple other projects have kind of come up. If you saw Chris's report, he gave you a couple of things. We've had Ray Roofing out to look at our roofs, and you saw a bunch of pictures of those and some recommendations. But one of those items is a gym foyer at Haven Grade School. For those that were around here know, we replaced the roof on our gym when we did our bond, but not the front foyer. And so that's a problem area. And they identified a couple other problem areas I saw on what he gave me today, so. Renovate the exterior at Yoder Charter School, that came up last year. We're trying to get some ideas of what the scope of that might include. Probably the one that we have noticed is, it's got kind of a fascia and a guttering system around the top of it that doesn't look very good. It has several locations that it needs to be replaced. Certainly, there's some windows and some painting that needs to happen that way too. So there's a few aspects to that renovation at Yoder Charter School that would be part of that. And then also Haven Grade School, we've asked 5 Star Mechanical, who's doing our upgrades to our HVAC units as part of our Sparks money and COVID updates, to do an inventory of all of our HVAC units. We haven't received that yet. Chris has identified this unit above the grade school office as one of the older ones and one that would need to be replaced. And it's, there are just some certain parts, certain mechanical rooftop things, roofs, that we need to start getting on as a rotation so we stay up to date with it. So, I wanted to share this with you tonight, not that you have to make any decisions on it, but I want you to see the list and maybe see if there's anything that you believe we're missing.
I have a question. Maybe I've asked this before and I don't know, but when we're talking about roofs, I know we pay a lot of insurance. Is that not a claimable item for a school? Or I don't know how that works on a commercial policy.
Yes, if it's under warranty. So roofs have a warranty time, but we have some that are out of warranty, is that right, Chris?
I'd say any of our roofs, if they get hit by hail or any damage, they will be covered. So like, Yoder Grade School roof, which they say has 15 years on it. Probably about 10 years ago, I don't know if you remember the big hailstorm we had through here, that roof was completely replaced. We had a couple roofs on here that were completely replaced, so.
So any of them that are on this list or whatever would be ones that maybe are out of warranty?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. No more warranty on it. The only ones we really have, we made any warranty on are probably the new roofs that we just had done on the bond. Are pretty much the ones that are left.
Is there not a difference between warranty and insurance? Warranty would be the company that put it on. Insurance is.
Yeah, warranty is usually about, most warranties are about 15 years. So we have, those are like the roofs that I was saying, our 15-year roofs are still under warranty. Insurance is totally different. That's when damages happen by weather or something, wind or hail or.
But that's not what you saw, or, I mean, the estimate from Ray Roofing wasn't anything that insurance would cover. The damage
No,
wasn't anything.
nothing is there for insurance. They saw some stuff that they're hoping that could be warranty. And we're in the process of trying to change them to where they could do the warranty work, and then they will get that, they'll try to do warranty on it. And you saw, I don't know, you saw some of it, if you looked at the pictures, there's some blisters up there on our roofs. And that was a roof that Ray put on, and that's under warranty, so they'll go out there and fix those blisters and lay them back down. So a lot of the stuff you saw, Ray is gonna fix. But they pretty much fix anything anyway for free for us, luckily, because most of these are their roofs. I'm guessing we had some stuff done on the energy audit. We had a roof at the grade school in the energy audit. It maybe has a couple years left on warranty. And then all the roofs that were done under the bond are still under warranty. And then a few roofs that were done with the hail damage are under warranty. The ones that he's pointed out that's needed fixed are not under warranty anymore.
And is our insurance policy, does it pay replacement costs, so does it cover everything except for the deductible, or do they depreciate the roofs?
I have never seen depreciation. I've never seen that when we've had it done. It's, I think our deductible, what, like 20,000, I think now, somewhere around there.
When are you gonna start getting bids on the auditorium?
Well, we'd probably like to look into, last year we actually released an RFP on it with some help of a local contractor. And so I would say we would probably be prepared to do that in November sometime. So maybe we could approve bids in December?
So is that how we came up with the 300,000 number, just a?
Yeah, a year ago, when we worked with the contractor on it, we asked for kind of a rough estimate, and the number was 260,000. I don't think that included stage lights. I think since then, we've determined maybe stage lights, so we rounded it up to 300. Until we bid it, we wouldn't get a good firm number for you anyway.
Now, the question that I have is, with this last year, you said none of the teachers that actually use it got back to you, if I remember correctly, on the types of things that they would want. And so, I would be curious to get some input from the teachers on, you know, do we need to completely redo the whole thing? Or, I mean, if it's not used a whole lot, maybe fix some of the seats, or, you know, because, I mean, how often is the auditorium used?
Daily, okay?
Daily.
For the most part.
Quite often.
Do you have like drawings and the scope figured out for what you want to get done,
Pretty close,
or pretty close?
because we went through the process.
That's what I assumed, but I just,
I remember walking through the fax room too last year, and it's one it's about as outdated as the auditorium is. I mean, it's the same as it was when it was in the 80s, so that one ought to maybe be moved up.
I have a question on the grade school gym foyer entrance. Chris, is that the outside, that's the outside roof? It's not the foyer inside, correct? We're talking about the roof on the outside, is that right?
Yeah, it's on the front side of it, where you'd walk right into the gym. It's a roof right above that.
Okay, so,
It's over the new bathroom, they're not new, the redone bathrooms, and the front entryway before you walk into the gym. It's the roof above that.
so is it leaking to the extent that we could have some like structural damage going on with walls or anything like that, or?
One of the reasons I brought it up was because we redid the bathroom, and one of our leaks particularly is in that bathroom, so it runs down the wall. And then we have some structural damage back where we store some chairs. And then we have a leak right above our fire panel. That water runs down onto our fire panel. And they tried to repair everything they could when they were out here this time, but it's just an old rubber roof. It's probably our oldest roof at this point.
I guess my thought this year would be with as much as everybody's struggling because of, you know, being out of work and things like that, you know, is there, I mean, I think the electrical upgrade and obviously if we're having damage in the roof are things we should probably consider, but anything extra, I mean, would there be a problem putting the auditorium off for another year to give people a chance to recover before we look at raising capital outlay again? I mean, is it something we can put off?
I think we already have the capital outlay already spoken for.
Right, I know, but we've got another year coming next year.
I know it's not gonna get any cheaper. Never does. If you keep kicking it down the road, you're gonna look at $500,000 before you know it.
And the costs just keep going up and up and up.
And there's the same seats that were in there when the building was built, I'm sure. I mean,
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I know the seats need some work, but as far as like stage lighting and completely redoing the floor and the ceiling and new curtains and a new projector, I think, was in there or something like that, and a new screen and, you know, I mean, it's, you know, do the things that need done, but, you know, just to help the taxpayers out for another year, you know, is this something we could, some of the stuff we can move to another year and maybe do a smaller project?
That's a challenge because of the nature of the project, when you have the chairs out, there's no better time to fix the lights. So you can get in there and do it.
I think it'd be a lot more usable space if there was lighting in there that you could turn on over. I mean, it's a dungeon in there right now. I mean, it's fine for somebody that's up on the stage and you're watching a program, but otherwise it's
It
very,
has
very
mood
dark.
lights all the time.
Yeah.
So if we're using it daily, I mean, it's, I would think.
So as far as like the roof, that sounds like a very immediate need. So do we need to approve Chris to go get more bids for that and try to act on that?
Is that something we can do while school's in session?
Yeah, I think they could do it during school. They've done projects like that before.
Yeah, for me, those are my two priority items that I like. I don't like leaks, I don't like, you know, other structural damage that could occur because of it, so I'd like to see, an estimate on that, but I think it's, beyond time that we, you know, address the auditorium. That's, it is a place that's used, not only, you know, by our students, but from our patrons who come in to, you know, different concerts and events throughout the year, and it reflects on our district. We've upgraded in other places. I think it's time to address the auditorium. That's my opinion.
I think the electrical upgrade for the stadiums is something we should get done quickly too. I mean, what would happen if we turned them all at the same time? Would it blow a fuse, or would it cause permanent damage to some things, or like if somebody accidentally did it?
I've got a brother that's an electrical contractor, and I asked him, I said, so, what happened there? He said, well, things would go black, and he said, you're probably gonna burn up your existing, electrical components.
Yeah, so to me, that seems to be a priority as well.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years now since we did that, so.
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel confident in that number at all? Because it seems pretty light to me, but.
Well,
I don't know.
I'm
I
gonna
just-
say, you know, that was 2 or 3 years ago, and I think it was 17 at the time,
Okay.
17 or 18. So
Okay.
it's obviously something to look into, and
Yeah,
once again,
it didn't get any cheaper,
yeah, it's not gonna be less.
no.
It's something, if I understand that work, and I'm not an electrician, but it's something they could do pretty quick. Like in a matter of a weekend or a couple weekends, if I'm not mistaken. So that's something I think we could probably get done during the school year, if I'm not wrong, if I'm correct.
I think so.
Yeah.
Clerk, was there something, am I just imagining this, but was there something perhaps that the city was going to help us with on this, or?
Well, help is a strong word. A transformer, the city's transformer has to be replaced to support this. Chris will remind me if I get this wrong, but if you remember, we got a stand out there, there's a transformer that had to be replaced. So we actually, I think we contract with the city to get that replaced. I think they were the one that provided us a bid on that.
That $20,000 cost, that's all ours.
That's right.
Okay.
They were out today because we had a fuse low, probably because of wind last night, I don't know, but we had a fuse that blew up by the transformer. I knew this was gonna come up, so I kinda asked him, and he did say probably that transformer now is probably $25,000 to $27,000 for the transformer itself.
And I might just bring up, you know, we've gone into partnership with the city before on projects, and this might be a project, we would see if they wanted to help support.
Yeah, we paid pretty good chunk of change for the tennis courts.
So, anybody else have anything to add?
Would it be helpful for us to vote to get bids on the electrical upgrade and the roof now, or?
I was gonna say that it might provide us some direction if the board would go ahead and approve the projects they wanted us to proceed with, and then we could start through that process. That just gives us permission to proceed. Actually, the final bids would be approved at a board meeting.
The HVAC unit on the Haven Grade School office, how critical is that? Maybe that was already said, I didn't hear you.
It's another one that, the reason I bring it up, because it must be rusted on the inside, that it's actually leaks and we can't stop the leak. So it's right above Laurel's office and it knocks the ceiling tile down, so once again, it's causing damage to our roof up above and the walls and.
Let's kind of go around the room, see if we can build some consensus here on what are your top three items.
Well, I think we gotta go more than that. I think all of them in blue.
I think everything in
I
blue.
would like to see where we are, and then like some of the classrooms, we spent a lot of money on athletics, and needs to spend some more money in the classrooms. Yeah. Start with the blue ones and go from there.
I think the auditorium, we're waiting until November, right?
Well, that's up to you guys. Tell us what you'd like for us to proceed with.
I think I would be a yes vote for the bottom four in blue.
Did you say for all blue?
For the bottom four.
Okay. I'm in agreement with Bill. I think we ought to be looking at all four, all of the blue.
All of the blue for me.
What's that?
All of the blue for me.
Okay. Justin?
Yeah, I agree.
Jessica?
I agree. All blue.
So let's get some numbers on all of the blue.
How about a motion and a second, please?
We can do that. Who wants to make a motion? Bill, Paul, all in
Second.
favor, raise your right hand. And all opposed, same sign. It's 5-1 in favor of addressing the blue. Okay, that brings us to item number 7. Never heard of that before. Gating criteria, Clerk.
I know you have this in your drive. I'm going to go ahead and give you a copy of it. After last Tuesday, you all had, we'd spent quite a bit of time talking about this, and one of the items was to gather Halsted's gating criteria. That is in your drive. It's always good to see if I'm hearing the right things from you, but I remember what I heard was get with Halsted because they had some information about absenteeism and really COVID-related absenteeism. And so just to give you some idea of what you're looking at there. So what we have done is added 2 levels of absenteeism, and one is actual number of students by building that are infected or positive cases. And so we tried to come up with some numbers that might fit in each category. And so as you all know, we have the 2 cases at Yoder Church School. You see those in yellow. And then you don't see cases for the other 3 buildings, and so they're in green. So that's how you read that. And then you see absenteeism, quarantine. So these are always don't have to be related to a positive case. They could be quarantined for lots of different reasons. And we tried to come up with the number of quarantines that are in place, and that relates to our absenteeism, and then we did those as percentages because our buildings are much different sizes. And so you can see that Haven Grade and Haven High have 1%, Haven Middle 14%, and certainly Yoder with 45%, which would put them in the red category. We did choose to leave positive test rate and and 2-week incident rate from Reno County. We also added the case trends. That was something else that Halstead had. And I might also refer you, well, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and go to the back side of that. So the back side then talks about things that would apply specifically to us in our learning environment. Is probably the big one, the one that gets a lot of attention. Well, that and activities and sports seem to get a lot of attention. But you can see maybe the differences there is in orange, we still left pre-K 6 in person, middle school, high school in hybrid. We did make the one change that we had brought up here about K-8 being one building by itself, and that does kind of go along with the idea of numbers by building. And so K-8 would be different with 7th and 8th graders, would stay in person. Probably the biggest issue there is the red. Here in a little bit, I'm going to give you the latest numbers from Reno County. They're in your drive there too. But you continue to hear the concept, and it kind of started with our commissioner. I call them micro classrooms, micro cohort classrooms. And the idea is to try to keep kids in really small groups, but try to keep them in person. And so what we put there in red is pre-K-12 remote, unless cohort groups of 10 and under can be established and maintained. So pre-K 6 would stay in person, 7 through 12 would read hybrid, and once again, the K-8 at Yoder Charter School would be in person. How do you do that? Might be the question. How do you get to that? I've challenged our building principals, and I just said, hey, figure it out, would you? And they're getting there. Reality is, we could be in red next week. And so then the question is, do you follow this in red for next week? And if so, can you get these micro cohort classrooms in place in that short amount of time? We've been to visit some other locations around the community, some churches. We'll schedule another one hopefully tomorrow out in Yoder. But many times you have to get more locations. I'll give Laurel credit. She started thinking outside the box at Haven Grade and said, maybe we could use the library for one of our classrooms. Maybe we could use the band room for one of our classrooms. So the idea is maybe instead of having 3 kindergarten classes, we have a 4th. And we take part of those kids and move them to another location. So our numbers start shrinking, and then our spacing starts getting bigger. We haven't really determined how many extra people that might mean we need. If you go by what Dr. Watson put out, I'll throw this out to you. He said, this year is a rainy day. And so those of you who have been saving your money in your contingency reserve account, it might be a rainy day. You may have to go spend that contingency reserve to hire some more people, if you can find them. I think how we use our people is really going to have to change our thought process on it. So we're going to have some people who thought they were this role that might end up being a different role. I think we just have to think outside the box if we're gonna get to a micro cohort classroom. So we'll answer your questions here in just a little bit, but probably the other change is to deal with activities and sports. If you remember, last time you saw this in red, it said no sports or no activities. And now you see allowed by county mass gathering guidelines. Tomorrow morning, there's a county commission meeting, and I know the health department plans to be there and to try to get a new mass gathering number passed. I know the number they plan to propose is 100. And then right now it's 500. If you haven't seen the Reno County numbers, and in your, I guess I can even project this. In your drive, there is this document, Reno County Situation Report. As you can see, it's 10/12. I just got it today. And so you might look there at 14-day view school gating. And I think it compared last week to this week. And so you see a big jump in new cases from 168 to 218. I don't know how much time you spent on the internet today. I spent way more time on my computer than anybody ought to today because I was in Zoom meetings. But the one I saw was Reno County is one of the worst counties in the state of Kansas currently. I don't know if this is true, but I assume it was, that Reno County is the only county that's potentially in red for next week in the state of Kansas. Reno County was also identified, I don't know how they do this, from a national deal as one county, as one of the top 10 counties of growth in the country. So Reno County has a problem right now, more so than lots of people. I've talked to the Halstead superintendent a couple of times, just because I wanted to get a clear picture of why they put what they did in their gating criteria. And you can go look at theirs, but obviously it really doesn't answer the question, what color are you in? I mean, somebody's still got to take the information and delineate it out. I asked him, I said, you could be in green in this category and red in this category, yellow in this category. I hate to tell you, when I asked him, who makes that decision when that occurs? And he kind of chuckled and he said, well, my board has said that if it's a significant change, they want to be involved. Well, how's that going to happen? Well, a potential Friday night meeting. I think we're trying to avoid that here in this district, but somebody's got to take the varying degrees of colors and make a mash out of it. Here's one thing I would bring up, and I've done a little looking into it. So Reno County this morning has said, right now we're in red. We still don't plan to make a formal decision until Friday. That's what we've established. That's what Reno County's established too. So I'll still have a Zoom on Friday morning with the health department. They're convinced there's no way we're not going to be red on Friday morning leading into next week. So I asked the question to KASB attorney today, if Reno County says you are in red and you should follow your red gating criteria, what's our liability? Should we do that? And they said, well, the answer is, if somebody doesn't like that you didn't go with their recommendation and would file suit against you, then you got to be prepared to answer to that. So why did you overrule what Reno County said to you? Reno County does have, if you go back to gating criteria and our directive from State Department of Education, we are really expected to have collaboration with our county health department on this. So I think that is an important aspect of it. So anyway, you see some changes. Maybe let's just start with questions or comments you might have.
Sorry. First, I'd like to thank Jesse for bringing this up, because I like the idea of the number of cases. I mean, that, to me, that's closer to home. But I guess, I go on what you're saying there, if it's, which of that, to me, that's the most important thing to look at, and then as you go down the chart, look at it, and then you kind of got, but there's still no set answer, because we could have 2 cases in the district, and everything else would be in red. That makes it a little tougher on your spot, but I still think it. And then another thing I was kind of wondering about, we could go in these colors, say we're in orange, and based on our number of cases in our school, if the county's red, then maybe like the outside activities of sports and stuff, that could still be in red, but we'd still be in orange in school, because you're not bringing 2 communities together. It's a thought I had on that, I don't know.
Is there some kind of a weighting that we can give with each color and kind of do a combination score with maybe perhaps the top 3 things that we consider most relevant to us?
Well, that was actually Travis's idea, is, you know, as educators, we're always looking for decision makers, rubrics, grading. Here's how we come up with you getting a B. That's how educators think. So I think that's a possibility. You know, let's say you wanted to weight attendance as the highest. So maybe you give a, you know, a number to yellow in there. I'm not quite sure how that works, but maybe you give a smaller number to positive test rate or case trends or 2-week incident rate. I want to make sure and say this. We're not the only one using absenteeism in our gating. I can tell you, Reno County, whether it's the health department or the doctor that's been part of this process, I would say don't typically like that, because they don't see that as predictive. They see that as a lag measure. It's information after the fact, so it doesn't prevent you from having cases. It's more that once you do have cases, then how do you react to it? So
I can see that, but at the same time, this thing's here to stay for quite some time, and we can't just live in a hole. I mean, we've got to go on and try to get along the best we can.
Well, and one thing that I found interesting was if you reverse engineer those numbers and take out the retirement or the long-term care facility cases, then that puts us solidly on the yellow on cases, and potentially in the yellow, maybe low orange in the positive test rate, which we take out the schools. Why in the world wouldn't we take out the nursing homes?
You mean the prisons?
I mean, yeah, I'm sorry, the prisons. Yeah, we factor out the prisons, so why wouldn't we factor out the nursing homes as well?
we asked that question. I asked that question the other day because it came up at our last board meeting, and the answer was those people still go to the clinic and still go to the hospital where a prisoner doesn't. If a prisoner
Well,
get
when she
really
was here,
sick, they go to.
when she was here last
Lansing.
week, I believe, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, that she said that that wouldn't make a significant difference, was the reason why.
She did say that.
Yeah. But, you know, if it brings us from orange to yellow or red to orange, that's pretty significant to me. And so if it doesn't matter, then why not ask for those numbers without that? Because they can provide those to us.
Are other counties doing as much of this testing as they're pushing in Reno County? Seems Cedric and Harvey County tests every weekend. I mean, is that why, my question is that why our numbers are up, it's because we're doing more testing than we were?
Well, they've addressed that several times too, and I wish I had that document. Maybe I do. Let me see if I have it. But
I know what they're trying to get to, but.
they
where
say
that-
that's really reduced our numbers significantly by doing that extra testing. That the
So
numbers would
they're not
actually.
finding it, on the asymptomatic people, they're not finding anybody positive?
Yeah, they are, but they're
So that
finding
would
a lot
increase our-
more people negative.
Yeah, but as far as our case numbers, though, it's still raising our case numbers though, because those people wouldn't know they had it, so now we have,
Well, that depends. If you're testing 250 and you're finding one person,
yeah,
I assume that would mean overall positive test rate would still
Yeah.
reduce.
if they're catching 10 or 15. But scientifically, I know what they're trying to get to, but we might just kind of be in that point where, until we get to that point, we're just kind of fighting ourselves with the numbers.
Yeah, that's come up several times, and every time they've said, no, it's reduced our positive test rate.
Right, but it has increased our number of cases, and like you asked about Sedgwick County. Sedgwick County last week, I haven't seen the updated numbers for this week, was in the green as far as positive test percentage, but I believe they were it was either yellow or orange. I'm thinking it was orange in the number of cases, and they elected to go with orange. And so even though they were less than 5% positive test rate, because they tested so much, they
They're
had so
taking
many
a higher
cases,
route.
yeah. That, and I don't know, because testing is something that you can get to or not get to based on the number of tests you do. I just don't see it as a valid predictor of this thing. You know, number of people hospitalized is a good indicator because you're not gonna be able to fake that. And then number of people in the school, and then the absenteeism, I think are good criteria to judge us on. And if we are using those two, I would say at the very least we need to factor out the long-term care facilities and use the numbers without those.
I have a question about your second, the absenteeism, well, and just in general, that particular, the second row, absenteeism quarantine. Are those percentages including staff? Because I'm confused about the red one. It says for staff.
No,
They don't include staff.
they don't include staff.
Well, what would happen if all our teachers were sick?
That'd be a problem. We'd have to act.
Yeah.
We'd have to do something different.
Okay. Is it, I don't know, I'm trying to think about this in the moment, so this may not make sense, but could we say like the bottom three criteria, the positive test rate, case trends, and 2-week incident rate? If it is, let's say, red in one, but yet I guess you still have to make a judgment call. Like, let's say you're in green or yellow or something where we don't have any cases going on in our district. I was trying to figure out a way you could use those two to balance the bottom three. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to figure that out.
Well, my thought was the lower of the two for number 3 and number 5, positive test rate and 2-week incident. You know, if you're at 5% and, 200 cases, that just means we tested a lot of people to get that 200 cases. So if you're less than 5%, then I would say you're in the green there. Or the same thing, if you're at 50%, but you've only got 50 cases, then it just means you didn't test enough people. And so, in my opinion, you would still be in the green there. And so do the lesser of the two there if we are taking those into effect. But I just, because of the way that the number of tests affect those, it's not really a good indicator on spread or anything like that, or even case trends isn't, because it depends on how many people get tested. I mean, You know, it's like taking a poll at a Donald Trump rally and seeing who's gonna vote for Donald Trump. You know, I mean, it's, you know, we're testing the people that we think are sick, and then we're trying to test some other people, but, you know, I just don't think that that's a good prediction model.
Do that rubrics and take the bottom three and give that a value, and the top two, and give that a value. Maybe just simplify it a little bit. I mean, they could look at either the worst case scenario or best case scenario, whatever. And then add it together and come up with a score, and 0 would be green, and whatever, every point you allow to it, and then yellow on the way out.
But is there at least agreement that we shouldn't consider the long-term care facilities, or is that something you think that we should consider in positive
That's
testing?
Is that something in the dashboard that they specifically single out, our long-term care or
Yeah.
nursing homes?
Yeah, it's in that, and I can't read it from here, but I think it was 46 was the number of long-term care cases.
Just as long as there's something, I mean, again, you're following the county here, so.
Right, well, and they can give us those numbers because they've got those numbers. I had to reverse engineer them.
Just as long as it's out there and there's an official number and not, you know, we're not relying on the Hutch News or something.
Right. Well, and that's something they would provide to us, I'm certain of it, if we said, hey, we want that number.
Here you go.
One part of the
I like
equation
your
to consider
idea.
too is we do have students that
I
are
like your idea. We just
working
need-
in long-term facilities with our classes and stuff, so that exposure is in our district.
Yeah, it's on page.
What was
Three.
that, Dr. Moore?
We do have students that are in our CNA programs and whatnot that are out working in these long-term facilities, and they do come back to our building. So I'd say a good handful of kids. So that pool of people there could actually impact our school possibly with that connection. So, does that make sense? I don't know if you guys are aware if we had it.
I was not. Is that something we could keep them more than 6 feet away from other people for the duration of this, or?
I see your
Well, I mean, it's
long-term
even
care
7
on
feet.
that top line there.
In the front
No,
of
I mean,
the.
just saying, instead of going to long-term care facilities.
Oh, yeah.
Seeing that
Yeah,
60
that too,
something
yeah.
up there.
I don't know, this might be kind of tough, but
I would think a lot of hospitals are not letting other entities in to do those kinds of things.
I'm kind of surprised that they let the high school kids into these places and they're pretty well locked down, so.
Yeah, I was
A lot of them do
thinking.
COVIDs on a regular basis. A couple kids I talked to said they were taking COVID tests weekly or twice a week or something like that, coming up negative and whatnot, but that's about all the information I have on that. I'm sorry.
Do they go work there for like an hour?
Some of them work on the weekend and put in time as actual CNA once they have that license. We do have some that aren't even part of our CNA program that are also working in Mount Hope right now.
So you do have some that are working in Hutch at long-term care, or just Mount Hope?
I'd have to look, I'm sure it's probably, it's not just Mount Hope, I know that.
Okay.
Hutch, I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you.
Or if they're working in, even if they are working in Hutch, and if that facility didn't have an outbreak, we could still take those numbers out, but if they're working in a facility that has an outbreak, then we wouldn't be able to.
Well, I like the idea of weighting this criteria. He said that was your idea. Did you actually come up with a weighted formula, or?
I mean, just at first glance, and I didn't look very much at it, but almost the top two criteria would be weighted at 2, and the bottom 3 are weighted at 1. And you could have a scale of 7 there, which is gonna tip them, versus an even scale. 7 scale, just whatever the majority was at that week would dictate if it goes left or right. But again, that's just a thought that he's in.
Well, I would certainly agree with weighing the top two more so than the bottom three, even though somebody said that's not a predictor, but that's what's really going on in our district, is those top two. To me, it makes sense that they're the most important. I know Reno County's numbers are way up, but that's because of Hutchinson, as I understand it. Hutchinson is like number 5 in the country right now for new cases per capita. And, I mean, you guys deserve credit. You've done a good job keeping it out. So, congratulations all you and for what you guys have done. I think you've done a good job. So I would like to see more of what's actually going on in our schools determine where our kids are going to school in person or not. So I would certainly be in favor of a weighted formula with the top two being weighted more in the 2-4 or 2-2-1-1-1. That makes sense to me.
And then we could even use the top scale 0, 1 to 3, 4 to 6, and then 7. If we rated them that way. Well, I guess.
I'm gonna apologize ahead of time for saying this, because I realize my position here, and you guys are my boss. So I'm gonna precurse this with that. We have watered this thing down multiple times already. It seems to me that it's all about keeping kids in school. So what would be next, might be my question. Would we change the weighting to avoid that time where we have to say, sorry, we're going hybrid? Sorry, you can only come every other day? I'm just looking at an endpoint. And I guess that was one of my hopes today, we had an endpoint.
Exactly.
I have a really hard time. This is the part that makes me uncomfortable. And the bottom line, I guess I have to make a recommendation to you. But when I have the health department telling me, Reno County Schools, you're in red, you need to follow through with red. And it feels like, okay, well, let's finagle the system so we stay out of red. That's a real struggle for me, and I really it makes me a little uptight. And in the end, I know it's, you guys can make that decision, and we'll go with it, and the chips will fall where they may. But I might just tell you that those are the things I do hear about, and I know you guys do too. Is it, we're going to wait until we get 6 teachers out of the building before we actually respond, or are we going to be proactive instead of reactive?
So what was your suggestion putting this out? I thought you were asking for input, because at this point, with just putting this out, it's you deciding then which category we're in, or what would your suggestion be on this scale?
Well, after my 4 hours of Zoom meetings today, and Karen Hammersmith said, schools, you guys, you're going to be in red. You're in red right now. Now, I went so far as asked the superintendent at Halstead, I said, so does your county say what color you're in? He said, no, they provide us the data. And he says, now I don't know what they would do if they had your numbers. He said, I think there would be a point where the health department would say to you as a school district, hey, you better do something, because we got a problem. He says, sounds to me like that's what you're being told right now. So to answer your question, Dustin, to be honest, with what I heard today, I would probably say my recommendation is we need to be prepared to go red next week. And red would mean grade 7 through 12 would be hybrid, and pre-K through 6 would be in person, but smaller classrooms.
Pretty great, Nickerson, and everybody next weekend too. Because aren't they, like we are, they're still in person, it's just Touch and Bueller that are not?
Yeah, Hutch is in hybrid right now. I'm gonna say Pretty Prairie has chosen, from what I hear, to not follow Reno County's gating criteria.
Well, in my opinion, the only two that matter for in-person education are the top two. I'm more than happy to follow the county's guidance on like extracurricular activities, because you do have people from the community coming to those and things like that. But as far as in person, in my opinion, the only two that matter, and also possibly hospital capacity. But it doesn't seem like we're anywhere near capacity there. We've got up to 40 COVID beds, and last time I believe we were at 13. You may have an updated number though. 15.
Yeah, 15 positive COVID patients.
And we do have some very effective treatments now. You know, of course, I mean, it's a virus, so it's a virus, but, you know, it's not like it was in the beginning where, you know, throw them on a respirator and, you know, half the people die. You know, the survival rate is very good now, even for people with comortalities or comorbidities. So that, I mean, that's my 2 cents. I think really the only two things that matter for in-person education are the top two, but as far as like community events like football games and things like that, I'm more than fine yielding to the health department there.
I'm looking at a gating criteria essentially by a friend who's the chief school board meeting tonight. They've had a problem with Sedgwick County because they felt like they were concerned about 529, Mays, and Goddard. And Cheney really didn't fit the mold of those big schools. And they created your own gating, much like we did here, but the 4 criteria that they use, they look at their zip code, active cases, they look at their district's COVID and absenteeism percentage above the baseline. They look at hospital availability rates and the active case trend, whether it's decreasing or increasing. Those are 4 things, and it doesn't say how they arrive at a score or anything with this, but it seems a lot simpler, and it doesn't follow so much what we're looking at on the bottom 3 with the county, if we want to just completely disregard the county. I think there's some risk avoiding whatever the county's saying. I mean, we're not that big of an area. There are not, you know, borders out there on the district lines, and there's so much movement in between. I don't like to neglect what they have to say and what they recommend, but again, like everybody else, you know, I want to be in school as much as we can in person, and I kind of think by looking at these 4 criteria, that's a pretty simple little gating thing, and I can send this to all of you to look at if you'd like, but, I think that the trend is certainly upward, and I think it's just a matter of time before we're in red, and I think we have to be more proactive in our stance and looking at, you know, what are we gonna do? If we really wanna be in person, we're gonna have to make arrangements to spread out with some of the churches or some of the other areas and see how we can keep these smaller groups as, you know, the county, or not county, but state education commissioner is recommending. And again, I think our biggest challenge there is going to be the resources. Where do we find the people to be able to teach all of these classes once they're divided up? Dr. Watson is saying, hey, look, grade school principals are gonna have to go back to teaching classes, you know? It's all hands on deck. I think we need to start looking around our community to see, you know, who the retired teachers are, who's available to come back and perhaps help us through this thing. I think we need to be a little bit more long-range focusing and looking at what we're gonna do whenever the whole county's in red. I don't see a big turnaround.
So do we have that data available for the cases by zip code?
Yes.
Yeah, dashboard.
But our problem is, part of our district 67501, and so that's most of Hutchinson.
Well, I think we're gonna have to look at the larger area, you know,
Right.
shoot for the mass. So we talked about that last time a little bit, and that, you know, we're spread out, but I think we have to look at where we have the most population.
Yeah, I think we have 5 zip codes, if I remember right.
Probably. It's,
If we were to make a decision on this criteria you gave us tonight, would that mean, assuming we went to red, like this just happened about the 10 cohort, to my knowledge, putting 10 people in a cohort. I mean, this is a new suggestion as of like, I don't know, yesterday or something. I don't know what day, but.
I would say last couple of weeks, from Randy Watson.
yeah, Dr. Watson, what he did, he got out and he toured some schools, you know, firsthand to see how they were, you know, handling this, and he just said, hey, it's not gonna work. It's not a long-term answer. We gotta do something different.
I guess my question is more related to what we would be asking our, people to do. We don't necessarily even know if we have teachers for it. So my question is, if we were to say, yep, this is good, wait it, go with it, we're in red next week, do we have the capacity to do red remote, or red learning environment that's stated here next week?
Well, I'm gonna answer that in a couple of ways. One, the document says remote unless we can do the micro classrooms. We wanted to put that in case we weren't ready. But I think our principals would be better off answering that question maybe than I would, because they're the ones looking into it. But that was what I told them today, is, hey, figure it out, and you have this week to get it figured out. They
Yeah,
said,
so
no
far-
problem.
Oh, let's say, so far, my analysis is, we're in a hybrid type situation, and we are, just because you have half your alphabet doesn't mean you have half your class. So first hour may have 2/3, second hour may have 1/3, third hour could have half, you know what I mean? Because your classes aren't broke by alphabet, they're broke just, so I'm guessing we're gonna have a little bit of fluctuation there, which means we might have more than 10, and so making an adjustment with that might be some of our students come out and be on a virtual type setup here in the building and then switch flip-flop. I mean, we're looking at a lot of different things there. Something else I would caution you on the levels here is what the county has put out is a proactive gating model. Your top two criteria on this are reactive gating models. So be careful, I would definitely caution you on that, to know that those two differences between the bottom three and the top three is reactive and proactive.
Well, I would say if red is not in-person schooling, and our goal is to have in-person schooling, then that's kind of like saying, hey, the solution to too much government is more government bureaucracy. You know, if we're saying, hey, we're not going to have in-person schooling, then that's not the goal. And so, you know, like by not having in-person, how are we getting to the goal of having in-person? You know?
Middle school, we've got, so going to hybrid mode, we would be able to, aside from PE, because we do have a couple of PE classes that are large, and I think space that would have either there or being outside, there would probably be some flexibility, it would be much more than 10. You know, I just want to add, I think everybody's maybe thinking about this, but we say that we're not going to be in person. Well, hybrid is in person. It's just every other day there's some form of that. So, visiting with some staff, they're very supportive of that. They don't want to be remote, but they do want some level of safety and spreading kids out to reduce transmission. So, at Gilder, Mr. Wheels kind of come up with a plan of splitting those classrooms up more by grade level, because we do have less than 10 at every grade level. And then, as you said earlier, visiting with the local church. And so we do have a plan to split those up as well. I believe we have enough staff to even man that within our own building.
Today, we worked, I worked with Becky for most of the day today on our numbers. I spent a lot of time this weekend working on this, and it's definitely doable. It's gonna be, we're gonna have to be flexible, but we can, Becky and I figured it out that we can get every single one of our classes down to a 9-to-1 ratio, being 9 students to 1 staff member. And in most cases, well, every class will all have at least 1 certified staff member. Some of them will have 2. We're going to create some new classrooms. We're spacing them out 60 times a week, utilizing all of our open areas and 2 different off-site areas in town. We went and visited them. We have spoken with the leaders of those churches, and they are happy to have us and happy to accommodate us. Dr. Moore created an off-site plan, keeping safety in the forefront, and our crisis plan in the forefront, including all the action steps that we need to do in those facilities. And it's gonna be a challenge, but it's doable. And I think if the priority is being in person, then this is the way that we go. Because the reality is that we do have staff members quarantined, and we do have cases in our community and in our districts, and it's not gonna change. It's only gonna get worse. So we need to be ready, and we need to be ready to make those changes quickly. And I think my staff will be ready to make these accommodations because they know that this is what we do. We teach kids, and this is what we're here for.
I think if we can do those things, I mean, why not start them as soon as possible? I think probably tomorrow would be too soon, but why not start them later in the week? I mean, just as a precaution, you know, whether we're in red or not. You know, if we can limit class size like that, and, you know, I mean, if the teachers are on board, which, I mean, that would be a whole nother question, because I'm sure it would add a ton of work to the certified staff, but yeah, if that's something we can do, I've got no problem with that. I think it's a reasonable precaution.
here? Where are we at?
I think I'm fine with this situation as long as, we try to go in person. I mean, I know hybrid, it's still in person, just part-time, till we change back to orange. And it sounds like everybody's trying, and I think that's what you gotta do. Muddle through it, and it's not gonna be pretty, I'm sure, for a week or two, but I think you just gotta do it. And I understand what you're trying to say, or is, I mean, Reno County will dictate our color more than what we do. I mean, basically.
There's some truth to that, yes.
I mean, that's, and
But we're the only ones with the authority to adopt their recommendation.
right.
And obviously we give that authority to Clerk.
Yep. I think you have some liability issues here, and I think after a while, you gotta pay attention. I mean,
You know,
Reno County's not a bunch of idiots. I mean, there's somebody up there.
and what we learned was sometimes it gets taken out of our hands. So with our positive cases and the quarantines went with that, all of a sudden, grades 5 through 8 at Yoder weren't there. So they went remote for 2 weeks. But at the end of that time, we planned to, it gives us a little more time with them.
So I guess what's the consensus? You guys know where I'm at.
You know, I think we've heard this a couple of different times and about liability. I'm kind of looking at something beyond liability, and it's morality. What's right, not who's to fault, who's to blame whenever it goes south. But sometimes, you know, it's hard to do the right thing. Sometimes we don't know what the right thing is. If it was spelled out, it'd be a whole lot easier for us. But again, you know, I've seen the rates just like everybody else has on, you know, how it's affecting different people with ages and so forth. But we have more than just, you know, the children, the students to look at. We've got their families, their people that they commingle with. We've got our staff. We've certainly seen their emails on how their health has been exposed, or they're susceptible to, you know, things like this. So I'm looking beyond the liability. I'm looking at the morality issue here on what's right to do just for the protection of our students and their families. And I just don't want to throw out the county's recommendation. I think there's a lot of validity to it, and I don't think we're that far removed. So I just can't say toss their numbers out. I'd like to, I just forwarded the link to everybody. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, but I predict more special meetings in the future. I don't think we've come up with an answer tonight exactly on what to do with this. I do like Cheney's idea. They're kind of faced with the same situation we are, being smaller in a larger county. I would like to know how they adopt or how they bring together those 4 criteria in coming up with their overall where are we at today type mode.
So what happens Friday?
That's a good question. It's-
I mean, can we come to a consensus tonight?
I think Clerk needs it. I think we need to make a decision on that too.
I do
Yeah.
too. I
Yeah,
think
I'm
so.
tired of thinking about it, that's for sure.
What is that decision?
I think you adopt this, and then go with it.
I still don't understand if we adopt this, how do we decide what color we're in? And if we're not
The
gonna
county
weight
dictates.
them,
Is it if any categories in red that we go to red?
Well, I think the county's gonna dictate it.
Well, but this didn't
No,
come
the
from
county
the
just
county.
makes a recommendation.
We added the absenteeism based off of Halstead's gating criteria to this document, right? So if we adopt this document, then how do we know what color we're in?
So Clerk, that is kind of the missing element out of this whole thing. Do you think that you and Dr. Moore can get together and come up with a weighting process to be able to arrive at, compiling these, 6, 5, there's 5 on one page and,
It's just the front page.
yeah, so how we can bring those 5 together to an average?
Or would there be any resistance to using the top two for in-person? And I'd be okay with, go ahead and go into these 10 group micro classes, I guess you'd call them. And then using the county's recommendations for sporting events, since people are coming in from the outside to those. Is there any support for that?
If we're going to the micro classes, we're in red anyway, so what's it really matter?
Well, but we don't have to go to we don't have to be in red to go to the micro classes.
Yeah.
I think it's a sensible
But I'm saying
precaution.
that's,
Yeah.
we're acting as if we're in red, which is fine if that's what we want to do, but and can do it.
And I think we'd leave that up to the administrators of, of each school if they felt like they could do it, or, as small as they could.
What would you like to see us do? You prepared, you got this far, and I commend you for that. What's the next step?
So, well, but orange and red are the same thing for high school, middle school.
Mhm.
So it's really not that big a decision whether we go red or not, especially if we get the micro classes in there, because the grade school kids are still in person.
So the new plan has pre-K through 6 always been in person.
Right.
Mhm.
There would never be a time they weren't in person.
Right.
Unless there was a mandatory quarantine that got put in place, and then they would be out for those couple of weeks.
Like John said, as far as the county criteria, that part, because we're mixing communities, that's fine. I think whatever the county says there, it makes it easier.
Yeah.
It's just,
I'm rationalizing this and I think Paul said it. I think the idea is we're going by what the county says. The county is saying you're in red, and I know this, they're not using the top 2 things here. But, I guess I'm to the point where with the numbers the way they are, the information I heard today, let's announce early, as in tomorrow. I probably want to get with these guys, I don't want to speak for it. As soon as we are now ready to announce, let's say we're going to red next week, here's what it means. 7-12 will be hybrid model, they'll come every other day, we'll put that system out in place. We'll have places for kids to go. Pre-K 6 will be in person. And as soon as the county will be able to say, move it back to orange, our numbers could go up elementary-wise in orange. The micro 10 and under is a red thing. To me, it sounds to me like what we gotta be willing to live with is 7-12 hybrid.
yeah, because we're operating under yellow now, so it's all in person, and whether we're orange or red, it's the same difference other than maybe sports, and who can go watch a sports game or concert or.
So I apologize, I misunderstood the the 10 or less. So the 10 or less is only with the hybrid model? Okay, I misunderstood that.
You're gonna have bigger numbers in Orange.
Okay.
And I guess that's an option. If you wanted to see something different in Orange, you could potentially go back to the way we are now in Orange. Then again, there's really no difference between orange and yellow.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to parents, they're looking at, you know, what's in the school. You know, I mean, the numbers in Hutchinson are the numbers in Hutchinson.
Yeah, but we all drive to Hutchinson every day.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I live and work in Hutch, and I know a lot of people. I don't know a single person with it, but, I mean, there's over 100 people with it. But same token, there's about 50 people in the obituaries every week in Hutchinson Zoo, and I don't know any of them. So, I mean, in a county our size, what's that? We're talking probably 40, 50,000 people between Hutchinson and the Haven School District. So, you know, 200 out of 50,000 or even 40,000 is not a lot of people.
It really
And
just
only-
takes
and only
the one
13.
death that we're associated with.
But this is a virus. I mean, we're not gonna stop a virus. I mean, we need to take sensible precautions, but there's no way to stop a virus. Never in the history of mankind. I mean, like even the 14 days to slow the spread was supposed to stop it. Then we, you know, I mean, we're not gonna stop it. No, the CDC never indicated there would be less cases with any action that we took. The goal was to flatten the curve so that way we spread out the cases longer. And the goal was always make sure the hospitals don't get overwhelmed. I mean, that was the goal from the beginning, and then it's morphed into, well, we've got to prevent people from getting a virus, and there's no way to do that. You know, 30 to 40% of us are going to get this before we get herd immunity if you believe the T-cell model. If you don't believe that, then you're talking about 70, 80% of us are going to get it before we get herd immunity. And, you know, will a vaccine come out later this year? Well, I mean, the Trump administration says so, but how many people are going to take that because it was so fast? So, I mean, you know, I think we need to take sensible precautions, but we need to realize that we can't stop a virus. Nobody says we can. Nobody even indicates that we can. The goal was always to slow the spread so that way the hospitals can handle it, and we've got great ways of treating it now. I think no matter what we do here, people are going to get sick. So we localize it to our school, look at cases here in our district and make our decisions off of that, not the 9th largest city in the state.
Define sensible precautions.
I mean, what I've said, you know, the top two, you know, reducing class sizes as much as possible. You know, where everybody's wearing the masks.
Everyone?
Oh, I'm not wearing it, but I've already had it. But my kid wears it.
I think you can wait
'Cause he
the
didn't
top
get it.
two more if you're living in a bubble, but we're not in a bubble. So the bottom three indicate it's out there and it's spreading. And the more we interact, the more this is gonna happen. And even if you go to red, we're still in person. We're just hybrid, getting into smaller classes and going. And that's what we gotta do.
Well, can we at least
And we
agree
just
to
keep,
take
we
the
just
nursing
keep
home
kicking
numbers
this
out of it
can
then?
down the road, and I mean, where are we gonna kick the can down until we get teachers sick and we gotta shut down? And then you're just gonna close the school?
So we close it to try to keep from closing it? I mean,
Why are we're not closing it? That's what I'm saying. Until somebody, the governor or the county says, hey, you gotta close that school, I don't wanna close it, period.
So hypothetically, just to make sure I understand this correctly, if we just followed the county recommendation of being in red and we go to red. We just go in smaller cohorts, and then no sports, essentially. Oh,
No,
sorry.
we do play sports.
Spectators, no sports, spectator sports. Is that a fair short summary of what would happen if you agree to red next week?
I didn't think we had that option worked out for high school and middle school. For the smaller,
It's just a hybrid thing.
huh?
It's
It would
for
be
the-
part of hybrid.
It's just a hybrid.
Only
that's
half the
good.
kids would come each day, and so it would get our numbers down.
They might be more than 10 in some class, like you said, but
Yeah, we'd have some finagling to do, but for the most part, we're reducing half the population in school. And our common spaces like lunchtime and this and that, that's probably high spread times.
Okay.
And then high volume classes, we would have to still reduce. So if we had 2/3 that day in that class, because it's not a full half split from the alpha group, just the way the cards fell, we'll have some finagling we'll need to do, but we can get it to 10 probably. It's not gonna be perfect, but we'll do the best we can with it.
But then I guess if they're hybrid and there had to be a case, then it'd just be that one Monday class that would have to stay home for 2 weeks.
And my understanding, Clark, is that correct? If this is only, we're talking in red for the 10, is that right? Not orange?
Currently, it's orange and red.
Orange, okay.
At a hybrid, but we didn't.
No, not the
we
hybrid,
haven't-
but the 10 kids in a class.
Right, the 10 kids go with red. The report I got today was if you went to orange, you would go up to 15 kids.
Okay. Yes.
Has there been any talk about like school lunches during hybrid, the kids that are not in school?
Yeah, we have to make it available.
So we would have something set outside,
Yeah. Sheree? So like if we were in hybrid,
Yeah, if we're in the hybrid, they would, have to order their meals online, let us know that they're gonna come pick them up, and they would drive through and pick up the meals. We're already doing that at Yoder for those, kids that are quarantined, and that's not a problem. The problem is, we need time to plan. That's the problem. We can do anything. We could go remote to where we're delivering meals to Partridge and Mount Hope like we did during the summer. But we gotta have time to plan. This is something that we can't just blink and do it overnight. We gotta at least have it a couple days. So we need to know.
I don't know, I think it's gonna be a tough sell to the parents saying, we're going to hybrid and we don't have any cases in the school. I mean, if you guys wanna take that vote, that's up to you, but.
John, I thought you were supporting that.
I misunderstood. I thought the 10 or under was, I misunderstood what it was. So,
But just to be clear, K through 6, if we go in the red, we'll have every day in school, wherever it be, 10 kids or less. And there's not an option to do that for 7th and 8th grade.
I would say
Because they
no,
change
say
classes
never
and
to
stuff.
that.
Great question.
That'd even be more
Well,
ideal.
and I would just say to parents, and it's you know what, I feel like we've worked really hard to come up with this. And Bryce, I mean, you said we've watered this down every time. And if we went back to our original gating criteria that we came up with, we would not be in person, any of us. So I feel like we're doing everything that we can. I feel like I've had parents, I know I've taken phone calls from parents that are unhappy that we are where we're at, because they feel like they feel like we're not doing enough to be proactive enough. And I know that I'm not the only one in a leadership position, either at the district or in a building, who's taken those phone calls.
See, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not getting that feedback from parents. Can you ask them to contact us when they do call you, so that way we're in the loop, or maybe forward the emails to us or something? Because unless we know what the people are saying, we can't really make a great decision. I mean, just say, hey, I've forwarded this on to the board. You know, they make the ultimate decision on gating, so I want them to have your input.
Yeah. I think we need to get a plan and kind of stick to it. I think that's gonna be the bigger problem is we adopt this tonight, and then next month we adopt another one. We need to kind of.
We do, that's what I was trying to emphasize last week, and it's not been easy to do. So do you have a motion, you have?
I like this one a lot better because it does have the absenteeism and the quarantine, the quarantine part of it. I'm just not sure on
So,
the best way to weight it.
let me ask you this, is it up to the gating committee then, Bill, to use these in their consideration and to come up with some sort of weighting process on what
Well,
we use?
I mean, I'm okay with that, or.
I don't even know who the gating committee is.
What's that?
I don't know who the gating committee is.
We have a gating committee that meets every week and determines how we're going to,
And who are these people?
pardon me?
And who is involved in that?
It's Clark and his administrators, his staff, and we have a board member representative, that's me.
3 principals, our nurse, myself, and Rice.
You haven't heard of this before, John?
No, I've heard of it, I just didn't know who was on it. Well, I'll make a motion, and you guys can shoot it down if you want to. But I'd like to motion that we use the top 2 criteria, absentee positive cases, COVID, and absentee and quarantine COVID numbers by percent for each building, to determine the level of gating that we're in, and that we use the county or for in-person education, and that we use the county's recommendation for gating for outside activities such as sports, things of that nature.
Do you have any problems with that, Clark?
Yeah, I think I'm struggling with saying we're only going to use those top 2 categories. Obviously, currently, that would mean we were red in Yoder. So we would only be in micro
Because of the
classroom.
quarantine.
Huh?
Because of the quarantine.
Well, because, yeah, we're in yellow and red there, but we're massively in red in quarantines.
But.
And see, in Yoder where we got cases, I don't think that's a bad idea.
But I like the idea because of the contract tracing that the younger classes got to stay in school, where this doesn't necessarily address that in that one particular instance. So,
Yeah.
because this is just by building. So that would be one problem with using just those 2 numbers. If you bring in the county numbers, then you could have a way to weight it. I don't know. Back to weighting it. I don't know.
Let me ask you a question. And I'll get Shannon's attention on this. If we said that micro classrooms applied to grades 7 and 8, and said, so we'll create, so only 9-12 will be hybrid. Would we be willing to go with the county's gating recommendation? So even if we're in red, everybody will be in school every day except high school. they'd be every other day. Know what I'm saying, Shannon? But
Can I just, I see the challenge with, we are departmentalized things, you know what I mean? So we are spread out, it's not a general ed classroom. So the challenge is that if we start moving outside, plus we've already got, potential areas in our town that are taken for other cohorts, so I just,
you're saying you can't make that work?
I hate to say, because zoning, never say never, but I think the challenge with having different departments.
Move the teachers instead of the kids.
I can't sleep on it.
But you'd have a little trouble with the lunchroom though, because they're sharing the building with the high school kids, right?
Unless they ate in their classroom. Or the gym. Different spaces. You gotta think differently on these kind of
Yeah.
things.
So somebody said earlier, would you be comfortable with the gating committee making the decision? And I want to know if that is, like, if we adopted this without the weighting, is that a possibility?
You're asking me. And would we make that decision by building then?
I would think so.
I would think that would make sense, just if, it's
Gating
mind
committee-
blowing a little bit because of the volleyball thing where, they were mixing, and not just volleyball, but it's one I thought of, but the mix, like, sometimes the buildings mix.
Well, I think the gating committee is here tonight, so I'm looking around to see what kind of,
More than happy to keep exploring kind of what we got up there, which is a score on a rubric that basically your highest score number would be what level you're in. So if we had absenteeism and positive cases, let's say it was top two, weighted heavier there, that'd be 4 out of 7 points, and that would put you in red. Or if you had low cases and were in orange, those would keep you floating orange. I don't know, this is a pretty quick look at it tonight, though. I don't have time to process it, to be honest with you. But that would be something we could continue to explore, even though tonight we just.
What, I mean, we gave Clark the authority to make the decision already. And if we approve this, and if he wants to use the matrix with the numbers or fine tune it with that, in the committee, I'd be okay with that. But I think that with that and giving it a little bit of weighting, then we have the hard number to say, this is why we did it. Instead of, well, I really feel that we don't have any cases and the county's really hot. That gives them a little bit more to, well, this is the number it added up to, so this is why we're in orange. Or red or yellow.
So if we were to draw the line between the top two and the bottom three, would we want to maybe give 50-50?
Well, he's got numbers up there on the one. The top two get 2 points and the bottom three get 1 point.
And I do want to remind you guys that 176 new cases is about 0.4% of the population. So, and that's what puts us in red.
Can you say that again, John?
So 176 new cases would be about approximately, and I base this off of about 40,000 people in the county, would be about 0.4% of the people.
We have 63,000.
And that's over 2 weeks, right? Those numbers.
Yeah. So, I mean, 176 seems like a lot, but, I mean, we are a very big county.
Yeah. I guess We do have your motion still on the floor though, don't we?
You don't have a second.
Yeah, we never got a second.
You want to repeat your motion again, John?
Yes, I would move that we use the top two absentee positive cases COVID and absentee quarantine COVID numbers by percent each building to determine the gating criteria for each building, and then use the county guidance to determine gating criteria for outside events such as sporting.
Anybody have a second? Well, obviously, John, that's not gonna work for us. I appreciate the motion. Has anybody got an alternate motion?
I think the alternate one then is using the one that showed up on the wall there with the numbers and then
That helps a great deal. This is kind of like giving us a tool. This is a tool with instructions.
yeah, and then the gating committee they can go ahead and assign where they want the numbers to be broken, but that would be my motion.
So let me ask you this, and I appreciate the motion is still out there. So you're still willing to give the gating committee the say on Fridays and not call a special board
Yeah,
meeting?
I think, yes.
Okay. Everybody else agreeable with that as well?
I'll second that.
So, repeat your motion again.
Given the weighting for the top two rows to get 2 points and the bottom 3 rows to get 1 point. And then gating.
Are you talking about per building or the district as well?
Yeah.
I see your hand.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second, and I'm going to repeat the motion recorded. It's pretty lengthy. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. 6-1 in favor of Bill's motion. 5-0, I'm sorry. Can't wait until Friday, folks. All right. Our next item is approval of reservations and contracts.
Yeah, listed below there for you, you'll see, there's some, regular one there, Scholars Bowl, for that. Dean Johnson, custodian at the high school, middle school, I hate to lose him, he's been a good one for us. And then a couple of work agreements, kind of around our, some of our COVID needs there too.
I would entertain a motion to approve the resignations and contracts that are listed below that Clark just mentioned.
I'll make a motion.
Bill's got the first, Jessica's got the second. All in favor, raise your right hand, and we're 6-0 on that. We're at our reports section. Mr. Nisley.
And our deal with our decisions, but I think it's a tough
tougher to come by too.
Ditto for me. I appreciate everybody's contribution. It's not an easy job, especially in times like these, so thank you for everything. I don't have anything further. Bill?
I'd second what Jessica said. I agree 100%. I was gonna make a comment myself about that, just that I know people get frustrated when we change our minds, but understand there's a good chance I might change my mind next month or whenever we have another meeting, so.
Exactly
there's
right.
Lots of stuff going on, lots of new information coming in. I appreciate, the effort to keep all the kids in class, even in red, so, you know, I applaud you for that. And Shannon, I look forward to you making that happen too. But no, I mean, I would certainly appreciate any effort to keep our kids in class, whether it's groups of 10 or whatever. You know, I think it's good for the parents, it's good for the kids, it's good for everybody. But thank you all for everything that you guys have done. I think you guys have done a tremendous job to this point, so thank you.
Mr. Weitzer?
Again, I want to thank everybody for all the work they've put into this. This is not an easy meeting, and, you know, the board's spoken, and so we've got our decision, and so it is what it is. I will abide by that decision, won't cause any trouble.
Good deal. Mr. Barlow?
I appreciate everybody's hard work, and number one thing is keep the kids in school. So I appreciate it.
All right, board clerk report. Danelle?
If anybody's interested in the meeting KSB,
Another
December
meeting?
2nd
No.
and 4th, let me know.
I don't know if I heard you or not. Did you have
Just your
anything?
KASB that you have,
Oh, okay.
the first part of December. If anybody's interested, just let me know.
Superintendent's report.
Yeah, just a couple of items. I would remind you, and we talked about it, just kind of reiterate that goal number 3, maintain fiscal responsibility and develop budgets to not only support operational expenses, but also provide for the maintenance of all buildings and development of new facilities. So that's Chris and I's effort that you heard tonight to reach out to that goal and that expectation you have of me and us. And so that's why we're trying to create this longer-term maintenance plan. We appreciate Ray Roofing and Five Star Mechanical partnering with us, and we hope to put that information in a little better usable document that we can maintain and not just have pictures of roofs, but maybe try to identify them and things like that. So we'll continue to do that. The other part, same goal, fiscal responsibility, develop budgets. I want to give you a little bit of a report on enrollment. Last week, my superintendent's report was to the state. Our numbers ended up being down 42, which was a few more than I think I'd reported last time. I think we were in the 30s. So the good news is this year's budget is not based off of those numbers. It's based off of 2 years ago. And so that kind of saves us for this year. I think the ultimate goal for us is that when COVID ends, they come back. And so we've kind of kept track of who we've lost, and I'll encourage our buildings to stay, to do something, to reach out, to try to bring those kids that we've lost back in. And, you know, several of them have gone virtual, and several of them have gone to homeschool, so they're still around. But it'll be important for us to remarket ourselves to those kids. So enrollment's kind of an important thing for us. That's it.
Thank you, Clark. Do you have any Zoom meetings tomorrow?
If I do, I'm calling in sick.
Just as long as it's not from COVID.
The next board meeting is a regularly scheduled meeting November 9th, 2020, Haven High School right back here is what it's got. If you have anything that you would like on the agenda, make sure you get a hold of the clerk or me. The next decision we have to make is whether we want to adjourn or to keep going for a little bit more.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Bill says adjourn.
Second?
Jessica, second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you for everybody for your time tonight.
So there's still a decision